Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Politics Relaxed. I'm very excited to say we're joined by Andy Slaughter, who is the MP for Hammersmith, and I have to say, soon to be my local MP, providing the boundaries change as they do. So, thank you very much, and also coming off the back of two by-election victories for Labour yesterday. So, yeah, thank you very much for giving the time. We really appreciate it.
Hello, welcome. We're starting today with a question from our newly established membership community, which
Mm.
viewers can join through our website for free today. Recently, we saw the very delayed response to the pro-leadership candidate as our rallies, sort of anti-Semitic comments, in contrast to the treatment of left-wingers, such as Andy McDonald last year, who had the whip removed for saying there should be peace between Israelis and Palestinians from the river to the sea. As friend of the channel Michael Cook says, left-wingers are often purged for total trivia, but a blind eye is turned to far worse offences by right-wingers. So one of our members, Taha, asks, are you concerned by Starmer's approach to dissent within the party and fragmentation?
I'm not sure that's that's an analysis that I've heard, but I'm not sure it's entirely fair. I mean, clearly, what happened with those recordings, I'm not clear who took the recordings or how the releases of different parts of them were staged. I mean, that's irrelevant. The content, which was just completely unacceptable. But it might explain in part the response to it, because these things happen in politics. The leadership of the Labour Party is confronted with this. They have to make a quick decision. They then get more information. They may have to modify that decision in that way. So I wouldn't agree with your characterisation that there was a long delay. We're talking about hours rather than weeks here. And I think the right decision was made. And you could say with hindsight, maybe that decision should have been made when the first part of the recording came out rather than the second part of the recording. But we're dealing with quite a short frame, really. The important thing is the remarks were unacceptable, the right course of action was taken, even though it clearly does have severe consequences, not just for the Labour Party, but for the way the by-election works, which is why it's interesting. I don't know how far the release was timed, but it obviously came out at a time when it was too late to withdraw the Labour Party name from the candidate, and so effectively, I mean, that has sabotaged that by-election as a fair representation of what people think. I mean, against that, we're likely to have a general election within 6 months, and therefore people of Rochdale will then get a full and fair choice election.
Yeah, but it did take a few days, didn't it, really, for them to kind of get their heads around the issue. Are you 100% happy with how the leadership sort of dealt with that situation?
I think it's all hindsight. You can always say, well, yeah, maybe it should have happened there. We are talking about a day or so in terms of that. And my understanding, and I've followed it as much as anybody else, but I have no inside information, is given the first part of the recording, and then a fulsome apology and attempted explanation, if I can put it that way. Your instinct perhaps is to give the benefit of the doubt to somebody who says that that's what they think. When it emerges that there is more to it than that, and then further investigation take place, and this literally is over a day or two or hours in that way. I think it's a little harsh not to say. We should keep our minds on what the substance is here. The substance is, were those remarks acceptable? And the simple answer is no, they absolutely were.
Mm. Yeah, thank you. And I mean, look, viewers will know I'm a passionate Labour supporter. I'm a Labour member. But this is something that I was pretty concerned with, was the £28 billion pledge being dropped. And Rachel Reeves said that in terms of climate change, the greatest cost to our public finances as well as to our planet will be if we delay and let the cost mount up for future generations. Isn't it true by dropping the £28 billion pledge, Labour is simply leaving the burden on future generations to pay and risking greater long-term damage to the environment?
Mhm. No, I don't have a problem, and I'm somebody who doesn't always agree with what the party or the leadership says, but on that particular issue, um, you could argue that it could have been better handled and it's
Yeah.
evolved over time in a series of steps. In a way, that is a response to changing circumstances. So to go from 28 billion from year one to 28 billion phased in over the 5-year parliament to less than 28 billion, I think has been a consequence of doing a proper analysis of what is possible and given coming from where we are in the political economic cycle, and also then saying, well, what state of the economy been left in? And the simple truth is, when you start thinking about the actual process of governing and taking over from this government, who are going to leave the country in a really terrible mess, and that's not even to make a party political point. I think it's a pretty objective point. Whichever government is in power from after the next general election is going to have unprecedentedly difficult problems to face. And because of the fiscal rules that were set, because of the collapse of the economy over the last 2 years, I think it's a realistic assessment. So that's, if you like, that's the pragmatic bad news side of it. The good news side of it is almost everything that was promised, because quite a lot of that £28 billion wasn't allocated. So the things that people were quietly being supportive of and seeing a real change in environmental policy, like the big concentration on both onshore and offshore wind, the gigabyte factories, expanding civil nuclear power and things of that kind, and really sort of change, but also in the process, giving people warm homes and lowering people's fuel bills. They're all in the package still. They're all in the money that is still allocated. So that's what I mean by saying perhaps it could have been better prevented. Maybe it couldn't have been, because that's the way it came out. But the message we would like to give to the electorate, and hopefully will give to the electorate during the election campaign, is this is a very radical change in exactly the way that people say they want, which is going to benefit ordinary consumers, benefit people particularly on low incomes, but really change the way the economy works on the basis of clean energy, but also on the basis of having GB Energy, which is the new sort of public organisation that's going to coordinate. This is a leap miles away from where the Conservatives have left the situation. And indeed, what you've seen in the last year or two, you sort of see them showing their true colours, where they are defending oil and gas, and they are doing things which are anti-environmental, anti-green, which make the job more difficult. And you begin to wonder a little bit, as with the economy, maybe with energy and many other issues, that they're actually leaving their successors in a difficult position.
I guess there are some people that are going to be like, well, can 6 billion extra a year really change a whole economic model and move an economic model to a green economy? Is that enough? Is the scale of investment enough to do that?
Well, the 6 billion is, if you like, the priming money. You expect to attract a lot of private investment. If you've got a government that shows it's going to be consistent and that it's going to invest, it's going to be stable, and hopefully increase that investment as the economy grows, then that is a stable platform for the private sector investing. I mean, the real tragedy of the last, well, I suppose it goes all the way back to 2015, 2016, is you've had unstable government in the UK. The bit of an irony there that when you had one of the few coalition governments, almost everything which they did, all the austerity program, I disagree with. But one thing you can't say about them is they were unstable. It was a remarkably stable government for 5 years. As soon as, ironically, the Tories got a majority, Brexit happened and things like that, we've gone through this, soap opera phase when people have not known who the Prime Minister is going to be, what the policy is from 1 year to the next. And that's obviously bad for politics, but it's also bad for the economy, and it's bad for planning ahead. And the most important area where you need to plan hopefully with bipartisan support, but certainly going 10, 20 years ahead, is in net zero and is in building a green economy. So that, I think it will make a huge difference.
Mm. Yeah. I'm going to go on a little bit. And I don't know, I think this is, a lot of people will have seen you in the news recently as one of the Labour MPs who rebelled on the ceasefire vote. And given your role as APPG chairman, or vice chair of the Labour Friends of Palestine movement as well, I wonder, many have accused the leadership of getting it wrong over Palestine and not calling for a ceasefire from the beginning. And there are many voters, especially young voters, that feel alienated by the Labour position on Palestine. I wonder how you'd assess the leadership's actions over Palestine.
Well, I mean, what led to the, not just myself, but sort of, I think 55 other Labour MPs to taking something which you don't do lightly, which is voting against the party whip, was specifically on a series of amendments dealing with the situation in the Middle East. And to be fair to the Labour Party, what the Labour Party amendment motion said at that time was absolutely right. It was in many ways much better than the SNP motion, which attracted the attention because it talked about what was happening in the West Bank as well. It talked about aid. It talked about other things. It didn't use the word ceasefire. And sometimes politics does come down to a word or a phrase, I think, in that way. And you sort of put up or shut up time, and you have to make that decision. So I don't, it's not so much that I'm critical of many things that the Labour Party has said in relation to this. And I hope that now, because things have got so much worse in Gaza, I mean, my perspective is maybe slightly different from a lot of people's because I've been to Gaza more than once. I'm heavily involved with the issue, as you say. I've taken a leadership position in a lot of the Palestine organisations. So I maybe have a greater knowledge and detail and could see what was going to happen, if you like. And it has happened. It's happened worse than any previous incursion by Israeli forces into Gaza or the West Bank. And we've now seen the consequence, which is nearly 30,000 people dead. So there are many arguments we put on both sides. There are many things which obviously we hang at the door of Hamas, particularly the release of hostages, the continued attacks on Israel that are going on, and the way that they have governed and the type of organisation that they are. But on the other side of the coin, it's absolutely clear, I would say it's absolutely clear, that the way that the Israelis have prosecuted the war, I don't think anybody really is saying that the Israelis would not have gone after Hamas, if I can put it that way. As an act of self-defense, which is often said by all party leaders, but also because they want the future security of Israel. The issue for many people, including me, is how they've done that. And they've done that at the huge disproportionate loss of civilian life and the destruction of not just homes, but the whole infrastructure of Gaza. And that looks like a breach of international law. You've seen what the International Court of Justice has said about that on the South African case. And therefore, I think we have to take the position, what should happen now? And the answer is, what should happen now is that hostilities should cease. Many other things need to happen subsequent to that, including hopefully getting rid of Hamas, certainly getting them out of government in Gaza, in terms of aid getting in terms of reconstruction, in terms of moving the peace process forward. That seems a long way away. But given the humanitarian disaster that there is there at the moment, we have to start with a ceasefire.
So this is proving to be like a really emotive issue, I think, for young people. You see on social media all the time, young people saying "Free Palestine." You see the marches in all of the cities, really, where you might visit, especially in London. And I guess a lot of the young people are saying that Israel's actions effectively amount to war crimes in Gaza. Is that a sentiment that you would agree with?
Well, I say we've seen what the findings of the International Court are. In the end, what is a war crime is a judgment for the courts. But if you look at some of the things that do constitute war crimes, such as displacement, such as targeting of civilians or being indiscriminate in the way that military action is carried out, such as the siege that hasn't just started in Gaza now, it's effectively been going on since 2007. Prima facie, those are war crimes, yes. In the same way that obviously what Hamas has done is also constitute war crimes. And it's not for politicians to make that judgment, but I think it is for politicians to say, this looks like behaviour that should draw the attention of both the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice.
Yeah, okay. So obviously one thing we've discussed already, you've mentioned it, you're a very principle-driven politician. Looking over your history in Parliament, you resigned over the third runway issue back in 2009. That was as a minister in government. You voted against the party leadership in 2017 over the European single market, and you voted against Starmer in the case of the Palestinian ceasefire a few months ago, and that's cost you your job on the last two occasions now. Reflecting on this sort of principled defiance, how do you assess the balance as an MP between party unity and your personal convictions in politics?
Well, very good research, but I only create to say I was actually sacked all three times. And I wasn't voting against Keir Starmer. I'm a very strong supporter of Keir Starmer, and I've known him for 30 years, and I think he will be an excellent Prime Minister. I'm not just saying that, I really do. And I think he's exactly the person we need for these times, which is someone who will get on with a very difficult job and has both the energy and the integrity to do that. I voted to be unequivocally clear on what my view about the situation on ceasefire was, and I don't criticise my colleagues who didn't do that. You have to accept some party discipline, and that's not because we're all clones. Every single MP, I would guess, has their own red lines and principles and things of that nature. But if we all do exactly what we want all the time, then it's chaos. And you might say, well, isn't that what Parliament's supposed to be like? Everyone expressing an individual view. When people go and vote, they're primarily voting for a party, a set of policies and things of that kind. And if they then get an MP who says, well, today I feel like doing this or not doing that. So it's always a fine line you're walking. You don't just want to support your party because you wouldn't be a member of an MP for that party. There is some integrity simply in supporting your party because you've been elected to do that, and it's only on occasion. And there are some issues which are issues of conscience where you are given freedom. I mean, not that many, but you are. Other than that, at the end of the day, you have to think not just what does my party want to do, what do my constituents want to do. And over 5,000 have written to me on the Gaza issue, and by 100 to 1, that is to call for a ceasefire. So I would be being irresponsible if I didn't take notice. And obviously, I have my own thoughts, and I have to factor them in as well. But I don't think I'm different from anybody else in that.
Yeah. Okay, so a bit of a change of tack then. I'm sure a lot of your constituents are also quite passionate about the ULEZ issue. As a London MP, this is something that seems to have riled up a lot of local residents. We saw the results of that Uxbridge and South Ruislip by-election was very ULEZ heavy in the summer. And in Chiswick, which is obviously going to become part of your constituency, we saw 8 ULEZ cameras vandalised in July, which made the news. So there's clearly a lot of people who care a lot about this. We've got the mayoral election coming up in May. Do you believe that this ULEZ issue could cost Sadiq Khan votes in the election?
I mean, they may be. I'm talking about mainly my current constituents at the moment, which is Hammersmith, rather than the prospective ones in Chiswick. But because when ULEZ came in for us, I think that's before the boundary changes were mooted. I think I did ask a question at my office, and they said we only had 12 people write to us about ULEZ. So I mean, and that's not to say it won't be an issue, but it's not an issue that people care about the same way that they care about Gaza or many other issues. But it clearly is. I mean, I did a lot of campaigning in Uxbridge, and I was a candidate there in a by-election 25 years ago, and it was an issue on the doorstep. I'm slightly surprised that it became. I think it became one of those talismanic issues that it was almost because many people who weren't affected by it because they had newer cars or nevertheless it meant something to them in that way. So I think it or the if I can say similar sort of issues which are to do with motoring and perceived conflict between motorists and cyclists or pedestrians or whoever could well be an issue in the mayoral election. Whether it will be enough to make a substantial difference, I'm not sure. I think there are some differences between different parts of London, different areas, and there are many other factors, including the quality of the candidates and whether they will be a proper representative of London. So I'm not convinced. I mean, it will come up, and I think the Tories will push it because they think, I'm not even sure they're right or wrong about this, they think it did them a favour in Uxbridge, and so they're going to try it again. They're going to use a lot of their social media, things like that, and leaflets. I get the feeling that it's not going to make that much of a difference. People are thinking, who's going to run policing, who's going to run transport, who's going to be the face of London? And the Tories have once again picked a dud. And I don't know why they keep doing that. It's I'm not being rude about Susan Hall because I've never met her. I don't know her, but you put even I as an opponent sort of put my head in my hand when she holds forth.
Yeah. I want to move on to young people because it's obviously an issue that we care deeply about as young people. And 18 to 24-year-olds are overrepresented in prisons, and it's an issue that you've championed as a local MP. So I wanted to ask, with the reoffending rates for 15 to 17-year-olds now over 30%, and with dreadful prison conditions in the UK, how do we ensure that incarcerated young people's lives are not ruined by prisons?
I mean, I think the prison system, there's that well-known phrase that, you judge a society by how it treats its prisoners, because those are the people who have least voice and who are hidden away most from public gaze. They don't always. I mean, a lot of people are interested in prison reform. And people are in prison for a reason, assuming that they've been correctly convicted. And one thing I should say about young people in prison is the numbers of young people in prison. And this actually has been a consistent trend over many years, but going back into Labour governments as well, has come down dramatically. And one of the consequences of that is that young people who are now in prison have generally committed serious offences. But often they have additional needs as well. They may have mental health needs, they may have addiction problems, things of that kind. And this is also true for the adult prison population. It's also true that prison conditions in this country are terrible, overcrowding is terrible. And although if you ask the government, they'll say, well, we've got this massive prison building programme, that will barely cope with the rise in the numbers that are happening. And I've got Wormwood Scrubs in my prison, which also includes quite a lot of young people. That's quite relatively new development. Big old Victorian London prison, not a suitable environment for rehabilitating people. Most of the prison staff would agree with me on that. And that really is important across the piece, not just for young people, but it's particularly important for young people in young offence institutions, whatever. The things that I guess we should take for granted, like they will be being educated, they will be prepared for leaving custody, that they will be got ready for jobs, there'll be help with housing options and things of that kind. Not because we're all soft liberals, but because it's in all our interests. Well, some of us are soft liberals, but it's in all our interests to ensure that they can then live fulfilled lives. So they're not a danger to the public. So they are productive members of society. So they're not then reliant on the state. They're not back then in and out of prison all the time. And to me, that's always been a no-brainer in that way. So I hope if we do have change of government, that is one of the areas that we will look at. I mean, these are particular interest. I've been over on and off for 6 or 7 years. And for part of that time, one of my responsibilities was the youth estate. So I visited a lot of young offenders institutions. And many years ago, I used to be a criminal barrister. So I used to visit them for other reasons then. I've been to Felton many times, the Scrubs and so on. And you never come away from any prison visit, in my experience, without a feeling of unease, without thinking that all this is doing is warehousing people and storing up more problems for the future.
Yeah, another big issue that's impacting young people that we wanted to ask you about is the issue of vaping. Felix actually covered this in an investigative documentary on the channel a few months ago. And in January, we saw the government's announcement on the disposable ban vape. Do you agree that this could be a crucial step forward for young people?
I mean, I'm maybe because I'm asthmatic, have been all my life, including when I was severely asthmatic when I was a child. I've always been sort of fanatically anti-smoking, things in that way. And when vaping came along, it was sold as an acceptable alternative. And I think not just for the user, but also in terms of polluting the environment, in contaminating other people and things of that kind. And now, surprise, surprise, there are serious doubts about it and conflicting evidence in terms of is it a way of avoiding people going on to smoke cigarettes, or is it an entry to that? I think still answer questions. And then on top of that, you've got all these. Is it being targeted towards young people, or young people getting ahead of it? I mean, that is curiously one of the things which has got Rishi Sunak into bad odor with his own party, that he also appears to take a dim view of smoking and like to see that controlled in that way. I mean, I would always err on the side of caution here, and unless there is clear evidence that vaping was not encouraging people into smoking, was not harmful in itself, was not inducing young people to get involved, then I would take a hard view on it.
Yeah, and I want to come back to our members just for the final question. So one of our members said, Thomas, he said, they're all as bad as each other. Keir can't define what a woman is, and Rishi doesn't care about anyone but himself. And this sense of disillusionment is quite common amongst young people. I wonder what advice you would give to young people who are passionate about making a difference but feel disillusioned by the political process.
It's funny that I mean, I said earlier on that in a way, I think people are, and Keir said this himself, there's been too much politics recently, and it's all been froth, and it's all what we call performative. And it's very, very frustrating. I think a lot of people, I think you saw it in the by-election results yesterday, they know this government's had its turn. They may or may not be sold on Labour, but I think they're prepared to give Labour a chance, and Labour is the likely beneficiary of the people's opposition to the Tories. What they really want is a government that isn't just caricatured by the sort of Johnson and Truss days, trying out their weird ideas, looking after their mates. That's why people have got disillusioned, I think, because they see politicians behaving badly in all sorts of ways with their money, but also whether it's being siphoned off into in PPE, or whether it's being splurged through stupid economic policies. And rather cynically, the Tories have used that to say, well, allow people to think, well, that's what politicians are like. All politicians are like that. I hope if we get a Labour government led by Keir Starmer, we'll actually have quite a dull period when all that the government does is get on with exactly the sort of things we've been talking about, whether that's young people's health, whether it's prisons, or whether it's creating a green economy. It's easy to say these things. It's easy to do all the sound bites. The actual graft of doing it, particularly when you've got a government that's been hollowed out, there aren't people really in there to do that, is really difficult. So in that sense, I would just say to young people, well, you're going to have to have a government. You don't want the current one. At least give Labour a chance to see what happens. And that sounds like slightly. There is another side to that coin, which is actually what happens. I go out campaigning every weekend, not just in my own patch, but around the country. I've been to the by-election. The number of young people who are now involved in that campaign, who've joined the Labour Party, or maybe even haven't joined, but have come along and really are positively wanting to contribute to change. I haven't seen that since 97 or leading up to 97. So we've gone through a whole political cycle in that way. So I totally understand young people's frustration, and you and all politicians must share that. But in a way, it's about the answer lies in their own hands. If you think you can do a better job, then you need to get involved and not say, "Oh, they're all bad to each other. It's all a con. They're all at it. I'm going to walk away from it." You need to say, "Well, I could do a better job than that." And if that means getting involved in a political party, which it really does in the system that we have, we get very few independents elected, then maybe you need to do that. You don't have to agree with everything they say. You pick the party that's nearest to what you feel and think about it, and then you can criticise, because then you're participating. In the same way that people say, if you don't vote, you don't have a voice. That's even more so if you're talking about participation. And it's one of the best things, one of the few good things about politics at the moment, is I see many more young people getting involved.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to end it, to be honest.
Good place to end, yes.
Yeah, thank you very much for giving me the time. Thank you to you for watching the video. Please like and subscribe and become a member, and then you can get your questions answered by our next guest. Andy, thank you very much.